If you want to help me out, guys, get a copy of the Book of Bushido, but let's talk about the medieval world and its views.
Think about this. The difference between seeing the world from above versus seeing the world straight on. Now, in medieval times, maps were vastly expensive and important to get hold of. Things had to be produced by hand and copied out. So if you were traveling in the medieval period, you wouldn't have a map that showed you, the top-down view. In fact, maps were accurate enough, but not amazing. But and sometimes totally inaccurate. And specifically with Jerusalem at the middle of the world, basically. That is the middle place. Whereas in China, it was the Middle Kingdom. They were the middle of the world. What you would find if you wanted to travel, you would have to go on a linear view. You would have to see the world linear. You would have to see it, or horizontal. It would be, I'm going to go from, I think, Edinburgh, then I'm going to travel to Glasgow, then I'm going to go to Newcastle, then I'm going to go to Manchester, then I'm going to go to Birmingham, then I'm going to go to Coventry, then I'm going to go to London, and I'm going to go to Cornwall, or Portsmouth. You would see it like this, okay? Now, this is important in medieval times, and especially in fairy tales. In fairy tales, you never have a map. Have you noticed in fairy tales, they never have, like, Snow White lives here, Cinderella lives here. It's just, there's some mountains, there's the great forest, and some castles, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 castles with towers and villages. And beyond that, you can't see or know the world. That's why fairy tales all seem to come from the same sort of idea. There isn't an identifiable position in there. Now, this came from when we're talking about samurai and things like that. When you're looking at samurai and ninja and everything, you've got to remember, especially before maps are solid, or before, even if they have basic maps, the world itself to them is different, it's horizontal. To them, they think 3 mountains, a river, a mud plain, a town. Their world is far more stretched out and it's far more difficult to get through. So it gives you this sense of depth, this sense of wonder, this sense of mystery. But when you have a map, especially a very accurate map, it cuts all that out. It makes sense and wonder and mystery gone. Now, this is important for fantasy and also for history. So from a fantasy perspective, if you're enjoying a book or you're role-playing or there's a computer game or something, when you have a map, you just go, oh, I've got to go over there, go there. I'll give you an example. I'm rubbish at computer games. I've just really enjoyed them, to be honest. I think I'd like to enjoy them, but I'm terrible at it. And I played Skyrim once, and what was interesting, if you don't use the map, you've got to just search the area, and that was difficult. But then when you put the map on, it takes you out, you're like, all right, let's go there. It's different. So that's the same for Shinobi on Shinobi missions. They did create maps, we know that they created maps, but we're talking about line drawings of, say, pathways, highways, byways, outlines of castles. Yes, but on the whole, they're sort of not really accurate down to what we call modern maps, and they're a bit all over the place. But what you find, so in fantasy and history, there's more depth and mystery if you stay on a horizontal idea. But if you actually go from down, you lose the emotion, the human emotion inside of it. So you should, when you approach history, do 2 things. When you're coming from outside history, you're just trying to observe it. Observe from a bird's eye view, from top down, and have a look and go, okay, there we are. That's where we're going. That's what we're doing. But when you're trying to put yourself in the mind of the original people, take away the downward view and just go for a horizontal view, and think of the world as that weird, dangerous place where sometimes you see the horizon, sometimes you don't, sometimes the mountain or the building is in front of you, sometimes there is just jungle, or forests. You don't know, and you don't know who's there, you don't know where people are positioned. Especially when you think about military, everybody's like, oh yeah, this person's here, and military maps, and we see the Germans came here and the English came here. That's hindsight. Back in the day, they are trying to track that live, try and get it up to date, and they're usually behind. So to them, most of the soldiers on a battlefield had a vague idea where the enemy were, but in reality, it's not this nice blocky, oh, they're moving here. There's forward troops, there's ambush troops, there's like night and day, wind and rain, horizontal viewing and visuals. It's really, really sort of a different world. So make sure to put that into both your history and any fantasy you deal with. If you want to help me out, get yourself a copy of the Book of Bushido. Watch this.